The warrior wipes the blood of the last kobold from his blade before sheathing it. The winter winds still howl through the barrel mine, but now nothing joins in because, even though the largest of these kobolds escaped during that final battle, mine is now completely empty. Our heroes, curious to why this mine has halted its work a day before the attack, decide to look around. Soon after, the ranger notices something on the rock face at the back of the room. She's not entirely sure what it is, so she shines a torch to investigate and notices a shift in the rock, a ripple, similar to the surface of a pond. She informs the mage, who detects the presence of an old and powerful illusion. Old and powerful magic was used to conceal a brick-lined corridor that eventually leads to an ancient and imposing iron door. With no visible key or handle, the players read the inscription laid into the door and decipher how to gain access beyond this point, as they stumble upon a dust-filled room, a crypt. Treading with a light foot, our heroes begin to notice coffins embedded into the walls on either side, flanking the main attraction of this room, a 7-foot cast iron statue of a hooded elf woman wielding a spear. A plaque near her feet reads, "All hail Lady Demestris, Mistress of the Moon, leader of the Umbral Knights." As the party begins to investigate the one empty coffin, the ranger spots dust that looks recently disturbed. Boot prints. Humanoid boot prints. Someone has been here recently. Was this why the villagers of Holden stopped working on the mine? And what of the leader of the kobolds, Cinderfang, who had escaped? Our players know they have a reward waiting from the village of Holden, but does the village also hold the answer to these questions? I don't know. Let's find out together. Good morning, Internet, and how are you doing? I am Dan Howells, aka Dover, and this is Designing a Dragon. That recap relates to both this video and last Sunday's Twitch stream, where the chat and I wrote a one-shot together called The Mystery of Holden, where a band of kobolds led by a disguised lizard folk known as Cinderfang had taken over a mine near the village of Holden. Out of luck, and with no way to repel these kobold forces, the village turned to the players who were new in town and offered a reward if they could clear out these kobold scum. And as always, those session notes are available in the Google Drive linked in this video. Now, of course, I have no idea what your players did or even what story you ran. That summary was just one of the ways our session notes could have ended, but that doesn't matter. See, if you and your players enjoyed yourselves and are looking forward to trying this again next week, well then congratulations, buddy. You're now running a campaign, and this video is for you. See, campaigns don't need to be 60, 70 sessions of these warring factions and world-ending events. No, it can just be a small handful of games that tell a zoomed-in story. See, just take it slow and build naturally. The idea of this video is to talk about the process of flashing out a one-shot into, say, a month of D&D and having a campaign arc. But we're not just going to be writing 4 lots of session notes. We couldn't possibly prepare for all of that, as we just don't know how things are going to happen or shake out at the table. But what we're doing is building the skeleton of a story arc in a loose and flexible way, so we can easily weave between story beats without railroading our players. And that's the exact same methodology for building any adventure, be it a one-shot or a 60-session campaign that spans 2 years. Before we get into this too deep, I want to give you all the best piece of advice I have ever received from the best DM I've ever played with and share it with you at the top of the video. You can make it up now, or you can make it up later. But either way, you are making it up. Remember, D&D is not what is just written in your notes. D&D is what happens at the table, and you are always allowed to put down your notes and just see where the moment takes you and where your players wander off to. You can never prepare for everything, and that's sort of the beauty of tabletop role-playing games. Read the room, and remember, this is a game, not a novel. Your players are in there too. Okay, so on stream we talked about using bullet points or stepping stones. Instead of creating a main path or a script for our players to stick to, we've created a lightweight and flexible approach, and we can use these story stepping stones in the game and weave an organic trail that's dictated by your players. Of course, this is just the way I do things. You can do it however you want and whatever feels natural. All I know is my experience of running games from 3rd and 5th edition, and the way I've interpreted and spun resources like the official books, Reddit, YouTube, and today we'll be talking about Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. But you should do this too. You should take all the knowledge you've learned and spin it on its head, add your own style and signature to it. That's how you're going to find your DM voice and be able to locate your own strengths and weaknesses. All in all, these steps take me about 60 minutes to prepare a 5-hour session. Now, it never used to. If you were like me when I first started, I would just pour hours and hours of myself into the game, into the prep, and think that would make a better world. But remember, don't give yourself homework. You're a player as well, not just the DM. Don't just wait for the fun part of your notes to start. Let's go over the process and what we did on stream. We'll start off with the truths. These are the truths of the arc, so we don't have to prepare these for every session, but it's good to have them in your head and be conscious of them so you know how the world should react to your players. We talked about these last week, and some people seem to be a little bit confused or misunderstand what I meant, so instead of truths, we'll call them facts. Facts of the world, or facts of the story arc, if you rather. If you have these written down, then that's 90% of your session notes. For example,
no, I am your father.
That's a fact. The DM didn't care about the player controlling Luke's reaction or even the consequences of saying that statement. Hell, Luke's player was so stunned that he just jumped into a giant hole, ready for them to pick this up for the next session. Players don't need to know all these when they start, they just need to know that the facts are out there, ready to be discovered. These facts tie into another heading called Mysteries, Answers and Secrets, but on a way broader scale, but we'll be covering that shortly. Okay, next up we have potential scenes. These are those bullet point scenes that allow us to take a scattershot approach and build stepping stones that we can improvise and weave between at the table. We don't write them sequentially because we don't want to signpost how or when these things should happen. That's really up to you and the players at the table to see if these scenes even happen. Having a start sometimes helps when players feel like they're lacking direction or motivation. Sly Flourish calls this his strong start, and yeah, I have to agree with him. Either use your recap or your first scene to give the players a direction to get them moving. When in doubt, kick a door down and roll initiative. And at the end of your session, feel free to ask your players, okay, so like, what are you guys doing next? If the players have a lot of options on, this may help them prioritize a to-do list. That way you can start to weave what they say into your next set of potential scenes. Using our one-shot as an example, we came up with the idea that winter is almost at an end, and so the town's preparing for a new harvest festival. The Baron suggests to bring it forward to thank the players for their hard work. See, we didn't write down a point-for-point sequence or really how this is going to happen, just general ideas of the scene. It's just stepping stones to a path the players could take. Does the Baron greet them when the heroes arrive? Do the players see decorations all around town? Does someone challenge them to an upcoming competition in the festival? That's all up to you, baby! Okay, answers, mysteries, and secrets. This is probably the thing I spend the most amount of time prepping and thinking about when I'm writing a game. These are the moment-to-moment things that your players can discover. You should never link these to a person, object, or location. Instead, just have broad statements that you can draw upon and weave organically into the game. Things like, Samantha is a hag in disguise, or you need to banish a demon to stop it just coming back from the abyss, or even Pokemon Trainer Red kills Blue Raticate in their last battle. That poor Raticate. Continuing with Holden, we came up with 3 secrets that happen inside the village and 2 in the surrounding area. For the village, the first is the Baron of Holden is kidnapping people for the Umbral Knights. 2, the Baron modifies the memory of the town via magically enchanted beer and food. 3, he helps spread this food and drink around by promoting festivals. For the surrounding area, 1, the local wildlife is thinning due to Mordred the dragon wormling that Cinderfang was working for. And 2, that the kobolds are stockpiling the beginnings of Mordred's horde at their camp. However the players discover these is completely up to you at the table, but they notice a strange arcane glyph on one of the keg barrels. Is the Baron acting a little too friendly during the festival? Or does the festival go ahead and the players take part and are too busy eating, drinking and socializing to even notice someone that they were speaking to is no longer around and no one remembers this person? Or maybe the players completely missed the festival because they were out dealing with the rest of the kobolds, and so a family member who couldn't attend the festival for some reason is completely panic-stricken because no one remembers her husband the next morning. Okay, next up, possible encounters. Players love encounters, and why wouldn't they? They have all these cool skills and abilities, and encounters are really the main reason they get to use them. You are going to have players who just play D&D for the encounters, so give it to them. Your most common encounter is combat. For example, you enter the Forgotten Temple and you hear a suction noise from the ceiling above you. Before you can even react, this semi-translucent glob of ooze drops down on the ranger, and you can see it completely cover her, try to dissolve her from the outside in. Roll initiative. That's going to be a great fight. But an encounter is anything that causes the player to stop for a second or use resources. Other than just fights, encounters can be focused on traps, riddles, the environment, or roleplay, and more commonly, they all sort of feed into each other. Encounter building is a much wider topic for the scope of this video, so in the future we'll come back and break that down. But for now, just a few of the encounters we came up with regarding our Holden one-shot was a local kobold camp. One of the hunters hasn't returned from her hunt, and after the festival, no one's going to remember the local tanner. Which brings us to locations. These are your set dressing, the stage scenery where all these scenes, answers, and encounters take place. In my experience, these are one of the loosest things you'll have to prep because you're always going to be moving along with the players in different directions. But having a loose bag of ideas of some of the key buildings in a village or rooms in those larger buildings can sometimes just help you move things along at a decent clip. I usually write a sentence per location with 3 key things in it. That gives me enough to riff off usually. I'm also a very visual person, so I use images and pictures a lot. However, I don't want to get in trouble, and I'm not really sure what the fair use policy of Google Images are, so none of our Google Drive notes will have images in. If you're like me, you're going to have to go and find those yourself, but that will help you flesh it out in your mind. An example from a home game of mine is the Crimson Hollow. The Crimson Hollow is a large cylindrical chamber where an effigy to Yeenoghu has been erected out of flesh and bone. The bottom third of this room is full of dried blood and bodies, and gnolls will sacrifice each other to this effigy in the hopes to become the Fang of Yeenoghu and be blessed by their demon lord. That's descriptive enough to get my imagination going, but lightweight enough to throw it away if we never use it. With regards to Holden, we came up with a handful of facilities in the village: the Baron's house, the Baron's basement, and the Kobold camp. My biggest piece of advice for locations is just to make them cheaply. You don't want to spend an hour developing the ins and outs of a robust sewer system or castle layout, only for your players never to go there. So as you've probably noticed, a lot of our locations, scenes, answers, and encounters all tie pretty loosely together because we kept those facts in mind when we wrote them. And if we pull one of those strings with very minimal effort, a bit of a bow can be formed out of all of them. Lastly, there's NPCs and rewards. I find these things less important when prepping the overall story arc than I do when actually writing my notes. Rewards are usually just a list of items I think that would be cool if the players got in the nearby scenes and encounters, and NPCs usually follow the same logic and advice as locations, but are as complex as you want to make them. Some players put a lot of stock into character interactions and roleplay, but others may just walk right past them to the next encounter. We'll cover NPCs and roleplay in another video, but remember, NPCs should always have motivation and ambitions. Whether it's the Baron of Holden kidnapping villagers to serve Lady Demestress and get into her good graces, or just a farmer trying to provide food for their family. Every NPC should have a motivation. Good NPCs have multiple, and fantastic NPCs have clashing motivations. That's called ambivalence, and it's a very powerful tool. When your player knows a character so well that they can wield their motivation like a tool or a weapon, then that'll be some of the best stories you ever tell with tabletop role-playing games. Or it can end them very fast. See, telling the queen that she's a and that she can go screw is a very quick way to end up with the dungeons. Or worse. I don't think we prepped a jailbreak today, do we? It doesn't mean it can't happen though. And honestly, that's it. That's how I write my story stepping stones and keep my notes lightweight and flexible so I can dodge and weave with the players and keep up with them. Like I mentioned, this whole process takes me about 60-90 minutes to do. Man, I wish these videos were that snappy. So if you feel like you need to do more prep or pour more of yourself into it, I hope this has been helpful. I hope this reminds you that you don't have to give yourself homework, that this is a game for fun. Feel free to do all the social media stuff and check us out over at twitch.tv/designingadragon, where we write tabletop role-playing game content every Sunday at 11 AM GMT with the chat. Everything we design is added to our Google Drive, which is free and linked below, along with every video we do, along with links to the Discord, so the conversation never stops. Okay, that's all for today. Take care, stay safe, and be good to each other.